Hey there, welcome back. I thought I would share what I've been up to these past couple of weeks because even wintertime is a little bit busy. I plan on having the farm stand open by Mother's Day and I want to have lots of bouquets available. So I've started already a few successions of Ranunculus and Anemones. They come dried and shriveled like this and you have to pre-soak them for several hours to plump them back up. Everything that I've read suggests that you should provide aeration for the corms as they're soaking to prevent bacteria from settling in, but I don't really have a setup for this and I don't want to keep the water running on them continuously for hours. So I just switch the bags and run fresh water over them every 45 minutes to an hour or so. And I had no issues doing it this way last year, and I've already sprouted my first succession planting this year with no issues, so that is great. I don't have to invest in anything different. They should bloom in 90 days after pre-soaking, though this isn't a strict rule. Variables like the temperature can affect when they bloom. I think last year we had a pretty warm period in the spring that caused mine to bloom much sooner than the 90 days. I think my anemone started at 75 days. After I've pre-soaked them, I put them in seed trays and cover them with soil. I'm using Sunshine Mix number 4 in the trays. I purchased it at Lowe's. It came recommended to me and it worked really well last year for the corms as well as starting my dahlia tubers in. So I'm going to continue to use that. I moved my trays out to my workshop where my growing setup is, and after about a week they began growing little roots and even pushing a bit of green up. The Ranunculus and Anemone are cold hardy down to 25 degrees, so once they start growing roots, I move them to bulb crates that I line with craft paper and then fill with that same Sunshine Mix soil. I think I put 18 corms per crate, and then I move them into the greenhouse. I'm going to keep a close eye on the forecast, but as of now, I don't need to worry about supplementing the heat for them. When there's maybe a couple of degrees below that 25 mark, I'll put a frost blanket over them, and when it's more than that, I will put a greenhouse heater out there. This is what I did last year and it seemed to work just fine. I didn't have any losses. I won't be growing all of my corms in crates, but I plan on doing some of the successions in raised beds as well as directly in the ground in the orchard area, and then this way I can kind of compare and see which way they grow best. But right now I think that in order to get these earliest blooms for Mother's Day, growing them on in the crates is the best bet. So we had a couple of unseasonably warm days, and I'm sure I wasn't the only one to use this time to get some work done in the garden. I began by moving a few yards of the arborist chips for my last chip drop in the fall. I did have the forethought last year to move them into the cottage garden with the tractor, knowing that this is where I was going to need them, and then it was just a whole lot of shoveling to get them in the exact spot. I also decided on a change for the raised bed layout that gives a symmetrical balance that I'm really loving for this space. I think since I tend to let the planting be a little wild, having symmetry in the structure is going to be a nice balance. I don't tend to get too hung up on making sure that they're perfectly spaced, but I did take some measures to get them lined up as best I could, just so it wasn't obvious to the eye when you look at them that they were way off. I layered the bottom of the raised beds with the same arborist chips, and I'll have to wait another month or so, weather depending, to get soil delivered for them. I also had just enough wood chips to top dress all of the pathways, and I'll get another chip drop in the spring and fill in the thin areas and the areas where the chickens have scratched away. One of the big changes that I'm really excited about this spring is I will be building a picket fence around the raised beds and greenhouse, something that my chickens can't sneak through. I also came through with some of our farm-made compost and put a layer of that on the raised beds that I hadn't yet added it to. I took out a few thyme plants that I had growing and a rosemary and put those in some pots and put them inside the greenhouse. The rosemary shouldn't survive our winters here, but this plant actually looks like it may have. So I'll keep an eye on it over the next few weeks and see if it can be revitalized or not. But I needed to get these beds cleared and ready for the cool crops that'll be starting in March. There'll be a handful of leafy greens, some turnips, and beets. The last thing I got up to during the warm spell was a little revamp of the greenhouse. This is something I've been wanting to do for a while now and I just haven't prioritized it. I started painting the inside of the window frames and the exposed 2x4s in the same color that I used for the trim on the Cerama coop. I really want the greenhouse to be more of a kind of loungy relaxation spot for us. We do use it in the spring for seedlings and, like right now, the Ranunculus and Anemone corms, but once it gets warmer out, it gets much too hot in there for anything to grow well in there. And yeah, it's just a space where we can go and relax. So once we get more warm days, I'll come back out and finish the rest. Thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.